been at our other sessions. And just as a reminder, we have discussed desalination already, our last session. We have discussed groundwater, and today we are dealing with the Faure New Water Scheme, which is our city's contribution towards our water strategy by bringing online additional new water sources from new water from additional new water from new water sources. And so tonight, as always, I really do hope that you take away in especially tonight's presentation the scale of this particular project's contribution to securing our water future. And so we've hit 6 o'clock now, and I'm going to get into it, and don't really want to waste too much time listening to me, because we want to hand straight over to Kashifa. But simply to emphasize, councillors and to the residents who are here with us, that on social media, often, I'm sure you will read, especially in posts that I may put out on my social media, residents who I would say are social media fans, with the amount of times they comment on posts, often from a misinformed perspective, let me say. Comments such as politicians shouldn't be leading these programs. It shouldn't be politicians making decisions. It needs to be led by engineers, professional experts. And so I wanted to start today's introduction to Kashify by emphasizing exactly that point, that the role that councillors play in our water strategy is a clear one in terms of priorities. One, passing in council the water strategy, which ultimately gives life to the different components of our new water program, which then ultimately are led by engineers who we can be tremendously proud of in our city, who are at the forefront of leading these very technical and very complex water investments that our city is making in order to secure our water future, and not to find ourselves in a circumstance where we ever talk about queuing to collect water ever again, because those are painful experiences that we never want to go through as a city, because we're making those investments now. And so Kashifa, who is our project manager, also an engineer, has been at the forefront of this project, has been leading this project, and really I think we can be proud of her as a woman in engineer, who we've heard from many times, as I've mentioned, and who will once again take us through tonight's presentation. So, as always, just to emphasize, we will limit the presentation, Kashifa, to about 20-25 minutes. We'll try and push to end by 7 o'clock, and really try and give the councillors and the residents here and other stakeholders an opportunity to interrogate the components of your presentation that they may require some additional information on. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, the presentation will touch on what the program is, and then in the later part of it, we'll talk about the financing of this particular project. And councillors will know to expect in December a Section 78 report, where council will make that decision around what options should be adopted. Kashifa, without any further ado, I want to hand over straight to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedruddin. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar. So basically, I'll be speaking to you about the Faure New Water Scheme, as well as public-private partnerships. Okay, so just the purpose of this event. So I'll present the project background, the contents or the context in which we're implementing the project, the city's plans for the Faure New Water Scheme, what is it in terms of the water strategy and the new water program, and then also on a global context. So where does water reuse fall in with on a global context? And then I'll also be presenting on how we should implement the project and what is a triple P, what it's not, and also who's involved in managing the project. So just content. So I'll just briefly explain what it is, and then how we should do it, and we'll take questions afterwards. Okay, so where does water reuse come from, and why we are implementing it? So following the drought in 2015, the city published its water strategy for Cape Town. It took lessons from the drought and comments received from the public and integrated it into a long-term vision to ensure water security. In the water strategy, there are 5 commitments. The commitment 3 of the water strategy deals with sufficient reliable water from diverse water sources, and this includes surface water, groundwater, desalination, and reuse. And it's in order to become more resilient, and our aim is to produce additional 300 million liters per day of new capacity over the next 10 years. In order to do this, or commitment 3, it's based on enhanced urban water cycle, which diversifies the water cycle with desalination, groundwater, and water reuse. And you'll see this is the desalination leg, the groundwater leg, and then the water reuse. And water reuse is, in this case, direct potable reuse, is the purifying and recycling of treated wastewater through an advanced purification treatment process to produce safe drinking quality water directly to the consumer. We have various schemes. So these are some of the surface water schemes. You have the Berg River Full Flow Dam scheme that will come about. We have the groundwater schemes, Cape Flats, TMG, and then we have reuse schemes. We have the direct reuse scheme that which will be implemented is Faure, as well as indirect reuse schemes, which is Cape Flats MAR and Atlantis MAR that links to the groundwater system. And then we have seawater desalination. And currently we get 96% of our water from surface water and 4% from ground. And by 2040, we want a diverse mix. So 75% from surface water, 7% from groundwater, 11% from desalination, and 7% from reuse.
5. Okay, laat ik nog wel even.
Can we please put on mute? Thank you, Kashifa. Sorry. Kashifa, you're on mute.
Sorry. The Faure New Water Scheme is a 70 to 100 millimeter per day purified recycled plant, a water reuse plant. It's a direct potable reuse plant. These are just artistic images of how it will look. The plant will be situated basically at at Zandvliet and Faure water treatment plant, and it's just in that region over there. The scheme will take water from the Zandvliet catchment, or the Zandvliet wastewater treatment plant. It will then purify it at an advanced purification plant at the Faure water treatment plant. To drinking water, it will then be blended with the dam water initially from Steenbras and Theewaterskloof. It will be treated again at Faure water treatment plant and then conveyed to the consumer. So just the components of the Faure water treatment plant, or the Faure New, the water scheme. We have zone 1, which is tertiary treatment of the treated effluent at Zandvliet. We have zone 2, which is the advanced purification process, and then the pipelines in between. And everything in this dotted line constitutes the Faure New Water Scheme. Okay. So the scheme is based on a multi-barrier advanced purification process. The process train is designed such that each process plays a specific role in either breaking down, removing, or destroying pathogens, viruses, pollutants, contaminants. This layered approach makes the process very reliable. It is a carbon-based treatment process, and it is similar to the treatment process that is used at the very first water reuse scheme in the world, which is Windhoek Goringap. The drinking water produced will comply with local and international water quality standards. So this project has been on a rigorous planning and design journey. The first step was to identify the hazards in the source water, in other words, the wastewater from the Zandvliet catchment. We have a water testing campaign to identify the hazards and to determine if they pose acute or chronic risk. The hazards that we're identifying are viruses, pathogens, organics, inorganics, pharmaceuticals, as well as chemicals of emerging concern. The testing campaign that we're doing is continuous. It is throughout the journey, and it's still continuing and will still continue during the construction as well as the operation of the scheme. We then, once we identified the hazards, the design for the treatment process was based on a HACCP-based design and operation approach. HACCP stands for Hazardous Analysis and Critical Control Points. It's a step-by-step system used to make sure that the food and water are safe by identifying and controlling potential risks before they cause harm. So it is basically a step-by-step process to ensure that proper performance of the treatment plant. You need to identify the hazards, then identify the critical control points. These are points in the process train where there are must not fail steps, where you stop a hazard. You then have to identify the safety limits, what is safe, what is not safe. You have to monitor the CCP. For the control point, you have to check the systems using online monitoring, sensors, lab tests, and then you need to check. So if the water is not meeting, or the process train is not meeting the water quality or the safety limits, the water is then rejected, and you fix the problem and you validate and you keep on going. So it's a system that was used, or process that's used mainly in the food industry, but it has been adopted in the water industry as well. And the aim is to protect public health, to build trust, and to support transparency. We also are undergoing enhanced catchment control. So the first barrier in the process is to protect the source water. This means that we need to understand the sewer catchment, identify where industries are. We monitor the sewer or the manholes, and we do continuous testing. This will lead to, we might have to change bylaws, we might have to change some discharge permits to ensure that we protect the Zandvliet or the catchment where we're going to do water reuse. During the drought and when we had the demonstration plant, the public advised that the city should take a precautionary approach when it comes to implementation of water reuse. And thus the city established the independent advisory panel that gave advice and supported the transparent development of potable water reuse in Cape Town. In December 2023, the INIP reviewed our design and supported the Faure New Water Scheme. They also identified further action items that the city has to resolve, such as enhance catchment control. And then also we had to establish partners with key stakeholders, with regulatory authorities such as DWS, Water Research Commission. We also had to involve academias or universities, and it's ongoing. There is also a water use platform around the world where we establish best practices and lessons are learned during this process. And then we have ongoing communication, and which is a notion of stewardship. So we had engagements with key stakeholders. We had our recent public participation process for the Section 78. We were engaging schools and teachers, and this will be ongoing throughout the project. So water reuse globally, we're not alone in the water reuse space, or actually in triple Ps or public-private partnerships for water reuse projects, but I'll discuss that a bit later. So this map was developed by the Water Services Association of Australia to illustrate all the reuse schemes that are either being planned in construction or already in operation. And this is to assist public communication that around the world that water use is becoming normal, and it's a concept that it is being considered globally. It's something that it's one of the cheapest alternative water resources, and it's to look at wastewater differently. So the first and longest operating direct potable reuse scheme in the world is actually in Windhoek, Namibia. And then we also have in South Africa, we have an indirect potable reuse scheme, which is Atlantis. And then you also have Belito and Beaufort West, as well as Old Mutual that installed their own reuse scheme as well. So this map here just shows that by 2050, 100 cities and communities could be using water reuse or purified recycled water as part of the drinking water supply. And it just shows it's throughout the world, various countries on various cities on various continents, and there has been a scaling of water use in the world. Okay, so the process for deciding, and if you attended our public participation, you most likely have heard this before, but I'm just going to go through it briefly. So the process deciding was governed by the Municipal Systems Act, Section 77, where the municipality must review and decide on the appropriate mechanism to provide a municipal service. In this case, it's an existing municipal service that it provides bulk water, but we are significantly upgrading, extending, and improving the service by introducing water reuse. The process for deciding is governed by the Section 78 of the MSA, and it basically sets out how to go about the feasibility study on deciding the appropriate mechanism. So just briefly, we completed Section 78.1, where we looked at an investigation on the internal capacity to construct, manage, operate, and maintain this project, or the Faure New Water Scheme. We then established that city has the appropriate internal capacity and resources to do the planning, the design. However, the construction, the operation, and financing is an issue, and we then requested from council that we do an in-depth feasibility study on the various options to external to appoint an external or private company to do this. Then the Section 78 feasibility study focuses on outsourcing of the services, and we have to prepare a business case, which includes technical, financial, institutional, and legal components for the most suitable option. We are basically at this point now, we've completed the Section 78.3 feasibility study. Because a public-private partnership was one of the options, we had to comply with the Municipal Finance Management Act Section 120 process, and we've completed the report, we've completed the public participation, and we're in the process of submitting or it's been submitted to PC. Portfolio committees actually will be there tomorrow on the agenda, and then eventually to council in December for a decision. So just an overview of the feasibility study. So there are 6 components of the feasibility study. The first component is the needs analysis. So we have to check, is there strategic alignment? Is the project aligned with the countries, provinces, and cities' objectives? It's aligned with the national strategy for water reuse, the integrated development plan, as well as the water strategy. We also had to do a technical analysis and look at the legal analysis as well as the human resource analysis. We then looked at the technical options analysis in more detail, and we looked at how we came to the Faure New Water Scheme, so eliminating various options until we decided on the project. And then we had to look at the service delivery options, so internal versus external service delivery options. And the 3 options that we investigated was a city build and operate, and this is called the public sector comparator. It is where city competitively procures a construction company to build the scheme to the city's design and specifications. It's the normal way of constructing infrastructure within the city, and then city expands the staff to operate and maintain the scheme. And then this is completely funded off CapEx, or the capital part is funded off the capital budget. Then it takes one step further where the city will build or construct the plant the conventional way. However, the operations of the plant will be outsourced in terms of a management contract. And it's similar to currently how Zandvliet wastewater treatment plant is operated. And then the last one is a public-private partnership. And this is city procures a private company to finance, design, build, operate, and maintain the scheme. It is a long-term contract whereby basically you pay a unitary payment over 20 years. The city also expands its staff to manage the private company as well as monitoring. So you have to monitor as well as monitoring performance of the private party to ensure that they meet the output specification. Okay, then just briefly, I'm going to go through the slide, but I come back to it again. So in your responsibility matrix, on all 3 options, city remains the infrastructure owner and the water and is responsible for water safety. It's just under the PSC, the city is responsible for the financing. The construction is procured to a construction company, and the operation is done by the city. Under the management contract, it's basically city provides the financing. The construction is procured through a conventional construction contract, and there's a management contract to operate the scheme. And then in the triple P case, the financing, construction, and operation and maintenance is done through the private party through a triple P agreement. Okay, so just back to the slide. So we're at project due diligence. So we had to check all the land issues, all the legal issues, what regulatory approvals are there, do we require water use license, what human resources are required for the various different options, and how do we meet the socioeconomic and triple BE goals or benefits, and how do we support SMMEs throughout this project. We then had to look at the value assessment, and I'm going to go one slide through. And basically the value assessment tests risk transfer. So can significant risk be transferred to another party? It tests affordability, so whether the project can be accommodated in the city's budget, and it tests value for money. So which option is most economical? The cost of each option is then adjusted based on assigned risks to each party, such as cost increases, delays, interruptions in production. And just to note that the total construction or capital cost of this project is approximately 3 billion. The results of the value value assessment was that we set an affordability limit range, and this affordability limit range was based on the cost of implementing something else other than the Faure New Water Scheme or other water use options. So, for example, desal is one of the most expensive diverse water resources, and was based on the cost limit of a desalination plant, not saying that not Pardon Island, but an additional desalination plant if a Faure New Water Scheme is not implemented. So in the case of the PSC, where City constructs and operates this internally, the rand per kiloliter came to 51 rand. In the case in operation management contract, where we outsource the operations only, the cost per kiloliter came to 47 rand, or say 46 rand. And then for a triple P option, which was the most affordable option, came to 36 or 37 rand a kiloliter. So just to give an idea of scale, so the Faure New Water Scheme basically will add new drought resilient sources to supply of Cape Town. So one must understand that irrespective of which option, whether it's the PSC, the COM, or the triple P, we are building new infrastructure that does cost money. And with this, the Faure New Water Scheme will basically contribute approximately 6 to 85%, average 7% of the total cost of water supply in 2021. So there will be a 7% increase in 2031 on just the water costs. So not on the water and sanitation tariff, but just the water costs. Overall, that percentage of water will decrease if you look at the overall picture of the water and sanitation tariff. Okay, then back to the last case, which is procurement. So with the procurement plan, we have to look at internal approvals, we have to have engagement with National Treasury, we have to set a program, look at the budget, look at the program in terms of supply chain management policy, and then set up a procurement process. The next slide just briefly explains or showcases what the procurement process is. It's a two-stage bidding process. You can see basically the ones in green are all external approvals or views and recommendations from National Treasury. We need to obtain these to go to the next step. And then there's a council approval after the Section 33 process, as well as another public participation during that Section 33 process. Okay, so just understanding what a triple P is and what it's not. So from the comments received during the public participation phase, or the Section 78 public participation phase, one of the comments that mainly came up was no to privatization. And a triple P is not privatization. So the next few slides just goes into this in a bit more detail. One of the examples that the public brought up was UK Water. So, and this is a typical example of privatization. So the UK government sold all of its shares, all of the local water authorities in England and Wales on the stock exchange, and transferred full ownership of the water services to private companies. There was weak oversight and regulation enforcement, which resulted in companies maximizing profits for shareholders and accumulating large amounts of debt. And this resulted in basically crippling underinvestment into basically the water infrastructure, and the public was paying the price for it. In this case, full ownership was given to the private party, whereas a triple P, full ownership is not given. So In case of privatization, it's the sale or disposal of city property and functions, including assets and liabilities. A public-private partnership is a contractual mechanism to procure services from a private party through a highly regulated competitive procurement process. And this means that the Water Service Authority still is the council. The water service provider is still the city, and we are contracting the service out to a private party. We still are responsible for the infrastructure. We own the infrastructure. It belongs to the city. The asset belongs to us, and we're still responsible for water safety. So just back to the matrix, the city, like I said, the city is always will always be the infrastructure owner and responsible for the water safety. Just to give you an idea of who's involved in a private party. So you have basically the city and a private party, and it's usually a shell company. And that shell company is made out of shareholders as well as lenders, then a design and construct contractor, as well as an operation and maintenance contractor. So in a government entity, you will always have private sector involvement, from buying pencils to appointing a construction company to construct a reservoir. However, there is a scale from low to high of private sector participation. And basically, so the public-private partnership falls under basically over here, where privatization is the extreme, and you transfer the ownership of the asset to a private company. So just, I said I'll come back to this, but how we are in the water reuse space, there's also triple P. So it's not unconventional for a water reuse project to be a triple P. Goringab Water Reclamation Plant was the first water reuse plant in the world. It was commissioned in 1968, and in 2001, it was upgraded and it's now operated through a triple P contract, and it's basically a consortium of Veolia, Berlin Wasser International, and WABAG. And then also one that many of you might have heard of is New Water in Singapore, which supplies 40% of Singapore's water demand. It was built in 2003 and developed and operated through a triple P. And there's strong regulation and enforcement by the Public Utilities Board of Singapore. Then there's also triple P partnerships in South Africa. The Beaufort West water reuse plant was commissioned in 2011. That is a triple P. You have the Durban water recycle plant that was commissioned in 2001. That is also a triple P. The Belita water reclamation plant, it forms part of an existing partnership. And then eThekwini has just put out 2 tenders for wastewater treatment works as triple Ps. So it's not uncommon in South Africa. So what's next is basically plans for Faure New Water Scheme, or what is next. So we've completed the design. We are recommended the public-private partnership as the best service delivery option to finance, construct, operate, and maintain the Faure New Water Scheme to council. That will be in December 2025, and we'll wait for an outcome on that to determine if they approve it. And then we'll start the procurement process for whichever option, and construction is planned for 2028 and first water expected in 2031. So just before I end off, like Councillor Badruddin said at the beginning, there is a team of experts working on this project. It involves myself who's an engineer, we have consultants, or engineering consultants that specialize in water treatment and wastewater treatment. We have legal advisors, financial advisors. We have the SEM team on board. So there's an entire project team that is driving this project to become a success. And we would like to take this project forward, and we're very proud of it. And then just thank you for participating, and you can find more information on our website. The feasibility study is available, as well as a summary book, just basically a summary of the feasibility study. If you don't want to read read the entire report, it's a handbook, and then all other information on water use is available, as well as FAQs. So yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thanks so much, Kashifa. I wonder if you're able to put on your camera just so the councillors and the residents and stakeholders
Okay.
can get a sense of who you are, so they can see that you're not an AI machine.
Okay, can you just give me a second, quickly?
Sorry to throw
Okay,
that on
so
you.
yeah, this is me.
Cool. Cool, cool. Thanks. Kashifa, so before we take the questions, and I see Dr. Cleve Robertson has already come in, and so we'll take that in a second. In your presentation, as you were talking, um, I made the point at the beginning that there's this misunderstanding that, this project is being led by people who aren't necessarily experts. And I think you've emphasized just now again that actually it is experts, it is engineers, it is, people whose business, whose bread and butter it is to be able to do the technical work required for this. And I hope that the input that you've given gives everyone the reassurance and the confidence hearing that from you. You also mentioned through your presentation that in 2023 and thereabout, you mentioned the IAP. Now, you didn't say to the listeners what IAP is specifically, but maybe you can just mention to them what that is and what the involvement is. Because again, yeah, and you brought it in, but just to emphasize that even outside of your space, being the city, you pulled in international and domestic experts as well to guide you and the team in the beginning parts and still through this process. Can you tell us what the IP is, please?
Okay, so the INIP is the Independent Advisory Panel, and they are a team of experts, both local and international. That is, the experts are basically people that have worked on water use plants internationally. For example, the plant in Singapore, we have Ian Law on our panel. Then we have legal experts that is involved in communication or public engagement, all those regulatory approvals, what we need to check, what we have to make sure of. Karen Bosman was involved in that. We have water quality specialists, Mike. I think Brendan can come in here, but basically that deals with microorganics, chemicals, that research these topics. That is on the panel, as well as the Water Research Commission. So we have representatives from the Water Research Commission that is also sitting on a panel and takes the feedback that we're getting in discussions also on a national level to the other departments and to DWS. Councillor, you're on mute.
Thanks. So what you're saying is that there are so many professional voices feeding into the success of this program and really guiding in line with best practice how and what needs to go into this, so that ultimately when residents open their taps, when this program comes online, that they can trust that, as they do now, that the quality of water that they're drinking at that stage is still the best quality that the city is producing. I want to go into Dr. Robertson's question in the IM, and it ties into the point that I just made now, that that we, residents, society, the city, is being informed by independent scientists that it's not currently possible or feasible to remove the forever chemicals from sewage. So I want to deal with that part of the question separately and maybe first. Kashifa, in terms of the source of where the new water will be coming from, Zandvliet, can you talk to us about the quality of the discharge at the source point, and then maybe just a little bit about what more will happen at Faure in order to enhance the quality of that source being received? And then also, if you can touch on the question around the CEC component, and do feel free to bring in anyone that you may want to support you in your response.
Okay, so I'm going to bring in Brendan, which is our project lead from the consultant, and he's also a water quality engineer. He can give more detail and he'll explain it better than I do. But basically at Zandvliet, we have membrane technology that already treats the wastewater to a higher level than conventional water treatment or wastewater treatment plants. And then further at the advanced purification process, each battery will remove a certain chemical pollutant. There's been research in the world to remove CECs. So I'm going to ask Brendan to come in here, and then he can just speak a little bit more to it.
Thanks. Brendan, you're welcome. And maybe if it's safe also for your camera.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks. Just checking that my audio is coming through, Councillor Badruddin.
We hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So maybe I'd just like to get a bit of clarity on the question. It's a big topic, and we also have a few others of our team that can contribute to this, depending on how deep we want to dive in it. But my first question would be just who are those independent scientists? And my point in just maybe asking it rhetorically is that we're not in isolation, or the city is not in isolation in this project. You're not doing some renegade kind of project. You're part of a community of practice, which is made up of all sorts of parties that are facing the challenges of supplying water to growing urban communities, cities, into the future, where massive urbanization has stretched us and made it difficult to just carry on dealing with water the way historically has been. The easy reach of just saying, well, let's build a new dam and pipe that in is no longer a practical or an environmentally wise solution on many levels, and often more expensive. So there's an enormous community of scientists around the world that are constantly grappling with all of these problems. And scientists, of course, are scientists. They need to ask and answer tough questions. But my point in just saying this is, if you take opinions just from a unique set of vocal scientists with an opinion, I would just caution, look widely. There's an enormous body that we can look to in all of this. Then to maybe just acknowledge something there. Is it possible to remove CECs from sewage, what some independent scientists that might be referred to in that question may be talking about is that our current wastewater treatment technologies cannot remove CECs. And let me just clarify terms. When we use that acronym CECs, it's contaminants of emerging concern. But what we really are looking at is microorganic contaminants that are found in water because of how we use water, and the things that get put into the water that pass through our own bodies, the chemicals we use and handle, and with developing modern habits and a growing amount of chemicals that are available. So the forever chemicals are one particular family of those that have in recent years garnered a lot of attention. They're the family of perfluorinated alkyl substances, and they get used in fabric production, like waterproof fabrics, in firefighting foams and things like that. So the forever chemicals are one specific thing, but what I would acknowledge is that a lot of those CECs, including forever chemicals, will not be removed adequately in a normal wastewater treatment process. They're not designed for that. A normal wastewater treatment process is designed to remove the organic energy. That's the primary component of concern in wastewater, to remove nitrogen and phosphorus in its various forms, because when that gets into estuarine environments downstream, it causes eutrophication and unbalances those systems and will harm them. So that's where most of them are focused. They also remove pathogens to a certain extent. So that statement that was made in the chat, on the face of it, is true. Normal wastewater treatment plants can't remove that. This plan that the city has for the Faure New Water Scheme is not a normal wastewater treatment. It's taking flow from a normal wastewater treatment works that has fairly advanced treatment to begin with. And then it's processing it over and over and over again through a multi-barrier system designed specifically to take out those contaminants to a safe limit for drinking, and designed to identify and understand the different families and suites and how different types of chemicals respond to different types of treatment, so that you have a suite of different technologies all acting in different ways that all together, integrated all together, in the end produce safe water. It's not relying on one technology alone. So maybe let me just pause there. There may be further questions to explore into that. It was just a good introduction.
Thanks, Brendan. And Dr. Robertson, I really do want to invite you to, if you are wanting to, just raise your hand, and then we'll be happy to take you back on for any clarity. Councillor Little, let me pull you in.
I'm audible.
We hear you. Thank you.
Oh, great stuff. My laptop is about to go, so thank you for taking my question first. With the explanation or the question that was posed and the explanation that was given, I don't seem to get any comfort whether or not that answer has been adequately answered with regards to the removing of these forever contaminants and chemicals in our water. But my other concern is, will the users of this water be the entire city of Cape Town, or are we earmarking a specific community to receive this water? And the other question I would like to know is, what is this public-private partnership going to look like? Will we be informed who these private partners are? and I don't seem to understand what their role is going to be, these private partners, and how is the community going to benefit from this private partnership that we are busy setting up. Thank you, Mako.
Thanks so much, Councillor Little. I see Mike's hand is coming. I think Mike maybe wants to reply to you, Councillor. Mike, am I correct?
Yes, thanks, Councillor. I can reply
Okay.
to the...
Mike, can I just, before you come in, you're welcome to come in just a second. Councillor Little is making the point, and I don't want to miss her, in regard to Dr. Robertson's question not being fully responded to. So, Mike, if you can maybe also come in there, and then Brendan can support. But essentially, maybe a simpler way of asking the question will be, at the end point of the water being produced, can you confidently tell the councillors and those residents and stakeholders here that the water being produced will meet the SANS 241 standard? And as a disclaimer to those who also engage regularly on this, SANS 241 is being updated at the moment, separate process, not linked or not driven by city officials. So Mike, if you want to maybe touch on that as well, and then we can go into the who will drink the water, and then what is this PPP going to look like, Mike?
Thanks, Councillor. If I could just possibly start with the distribution of the water. The water will initially, I mean, it's a highly purified water. I mean, Brendan can comment more on the removal of contaminants of emerging concern. I mean, my understanding is that the Windhoek plant actually does significant amount of testing with regards this, and there is successful removal, and we even have additional barriers in addition to what Windhoek does. And it's our aim initially to actually blend this highly purified water with dam water from Steenbras or Theewaterskloof, and then treat it again through the conventional treatment process. But when I've finished, maybe if Brendan could maybe just give Councillor Little some comfort in terms of removal of contaminants of emerging concern. Just in terms of the distribution of the water, I mean, obviously the water leaves our Faure water treatment plant, so it will, the distribution area of the Faure water treatment plant will be the primary receivers of the water. But we do have the flexibility in our system to redirect the water to other parts of the city as well. So, for instance, the supply area of the Faure New Water Scheme would be parts of Strand, Somerset West, the Cape Flats, goes as far as Bergfleet area in the southern suburbs, Muizenberg. We can even isolate water from Newlands and send Faure water the whole way through to Fischhoek, Simonstown, that area as well. And in addition, we have some flexibility in our system to send parts of that water through to the Newlands Reservoir, and that supplies obviously areas like Constantia, Newlands, Claremont, Wynberg. Just in terms of the longer term plans, we are busy upgrading the Potsdam wastewater treatment plant, and we're also using membrane biotechnology there. So we are commencing with a feasibility study to look at Potsdam as a potential source water, and also putting up advanced water treatment plant at close to our Plattekloof reservoir, and that will then supply much broader into the system in terms of the whole Blauberg area, and even the CBD. If we send water to Newlands from the Faure New Water Scheme, we can also supply the CBD, and parts of that can also be pumped up to Kloofnik and go to the Camps Bay area as well. So it is quite our supply zone in terms of making making changes to our bulk distribution network can reach quite far within the city, and that is our intention. I don't know if Brendan wants to come Sorry, Councillor, I don't know if Brendan
no.
wants to just
Yeah.
come. Are you happy?
Yeah. Brendan, did you want to come in regarding the water quality again? And maybe just a more succinct response, if you don't mind, so we can try and squeeze in one or two more questions.
Yeah, sure, Councillor Badruddin. I, I think it's just to be as succinct as possible. That one question from Councillor Little was, will it remove the so-called forever chemicals? And the answer is that the plant is designed specifically to do that. So the answer is yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Brendan. And I hope that deals with Dr. Robertson's question as well, although there was a second component to it, which I hope maybe someone can respond to him through the IM so that I can squeeze in Onati Sowazi. Onati, we saw your hand. Do you want to come in?
Thank you, Councillor. And I must say that I raised this question, I mean, this concern again, because I kept on raising a hand, but I say for some reason it gets lowered. But be it as it may, Director Killig will know me very well, and my view insofar as this entire process, including, by the way, my role within the scheme itself, which is Faure scheme, and talking from experience. First and foremost, Councillor, as it stands now, Faure on its own, with the water from Thiefadweskloof or Stenbras, is constantly having challenges. Now we want to introduce water, which is the final affluent, from Zenfleet into the system that is having a failing infrastructure that is deteriorating. Yes, of course, the new Faure scheme is going to be a new build, but of course it's going to join the old infrastructure, which is the old new Faure, through its inflow from Stenbras or Thiefadweskloof, which is RSA. And also, Councillor, my concern, and you know our position is SAMU, and which we have raised is up to the LLF. The affected communities are those that will be along the N2, which is mostly members that are not even participating in this process. And I'm not sure during the public participation, those members were properly informed about this entire process. Also, the Zenfleet wastewater treatment plant, which is going to have this water to Faure, has been outsourced since 1995 to one entity, which is WSSA. And now you come and address that no, you are outsourcing to one service provider for more than 30 years. With the current contract, which is expiring February 2027, with prospects of wanting to further extend it by another between 50 and 20 years. Let's talk on the technology that you are going to use, which is the membrane technology. It is the very same membrane technology that City of Cape Town in Bellville Wastewater is using. But we want to outsource it through the triple Ps. Lastly, I hear that the presenter were making reference to some research that, from Singapore, and we're talking about grey water, which most of these countries, they are using grey water for irrigation. And here we are going to use it for human consumption, which is drinkable water. Do we have all the infrastructure and resources? How sure are we going to be that we won't have any failures, as we are already having, with only the water from the dams that we have listed, when we introduce this new system and project? Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks very much, Onati. And yeah, it's great to have I would say a city official who's usually not a presenter join us. It gives a different perspective. So you're most welcome here. Unati has made a number of comments, which I've just made a quick note here. And I think Mike has touched on some of it already, but please, Mike, you must feel free to just emphasize responses that have already been made. Unati says that affected communities that the communities along the N2 will be the mostly affected communities. And so I presume that to be will be the communities to whom or whom is he presumes will receive most of the water from this program. But Mike has given some insight into that. But Mike, again, please just emphasize that again. You've touched on the contracts, the technology, and also made a valuable point around informal settlements not being consulted. And I know we have a number of members of our communications and partnerships team here who I'm sure will have found that comment very valuable, because essentially a lot of the work that they're undertaking in to support the work that Kashyap and team are doing is to identify better ways of communicating to people who may not necessarily receive this information through traditional means, let's say, email, social media, newspapers. So if it is that you have advice on how the team can do it better, feel free to type that in the IM. I think that they will appreciate it. And one of the last comments you made was that, and I tried to write it word for word, that most countries use this water for grey water. And Mike, if you, Kashifa, or others can come in on that as well. Mike?
Yeah, so maybe just to first address the issue of Zandvliet wastewater treatment plant. I mean, it's not correct to say that we've had one service provider for 30 years. We go out to tender, and it's a competitive tender process. The current service provider tender, I think, ends in January 2027. We are in the process of extending it by 1 year because we're busy with a Section 78 process in order for council to make a decision. Are we going to outsource the operation and maintenance of Zandvliet going forward, or are we going to do it internally? And once council's made that decision, if the decision is to outsource, it will be a competitive tender process. Just with regards Faure water treatment plant, yeah, we have a refurbishment program for all of our water treatment plants, and Faure is on the refurbishment program. Faure is approaching close to 30 years old now, and it is our intention to do refurbishment, replace the centrifuges, and undertake all that work before the implementation of the Faure New Water Scheme. And then just to re-emphasize the distribution area, I mean, Bergfleet gets Faure water. I think it takes about 2 days from Faure to reach the southern suburbs. So obviously the supply area is quite big, but I don't think one must lose sight of the fact that the city's future lies with reuse and desal, because there are very limited surface water options available for us. If we don't investigate further reuse options like at Potsdam and other areas, we're only going to be left with desalination, and that's not going to be affordable to the city in the long run. So we need a combination of different sources to augment supply to the city. I think have I addressed Donati's questions?
Mike, there was also the component of most countries use this water as grey water. So I presume that to be for car washes and gardening and so on. Can you maybe come in on that?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe Kashifa and Brendan can also comment on that. But I mean, if you look at Cape Town itself, Cape Town during the drought, Old Mutual put up a direct reuse plant in their basement to supply all of their, all of the people who work at Old Mutual. So, I mean, reuse is done in Beaufort West, it's done in Ballito, it's done successfully in Windhoek. And then indirect reuse is also done successfully worldwide. But maybe Kashifa or Brendan can just speak about the growing trend of reuse and direct reuse.
Thank you, Max. So that is not completely true what Unati said. For example, Singapore, they treat their water to direct potable reuse used for drinking water. They do currently use it for industrial purposes at the moment, and it's because they have sufficient water from surface water to use as drinking water. But if needs be, they will use it as drinking water. In California, there are water reuse plants that use it that is for drinking water, as well as in Windhoek. Windhoek uses it for drinking water. It's an example, a clear example of a plant that has been running since the 1960s in Africa. Brendan, I don't know if you want to add further to that.
Kashifa, I think you did well with that.
Good. Guys, I don't see any hands at the moment. I think we've done our best to respond to some of the comments and the questions that have been raised. I see Brendan's hand, going to bring him in just a second. And I will then try to close our meeting after Brendan's comment by wanting to pull someone in from the team to respond to a comment that has been made in the IM, which certainly I hope that after today's engagement is really not the opinion, or at least you are willing to consider a different opinion based on the information that has been shared here. And essentially, it was a comment made at 6:59, also by Councillor Little, and maybe Brendan, you can touch on it quickly. When you come in, where Councillor Little says, notwithstanding the community that she suggests the water is being piped to alone, but says, should this community drink contaminated water? And it concerns me that at 1 minute to 5, after all of the information, there's still an opinion or an understanding or confusion that this water is contaminated, despite there being clear processes to really ultra purify, I would say, this water. Brendan, can I invite you in to make your comment, to respond to that? And then I see one more hand, and we'll try and close after that. Brendan?
Thanks, Councillor. If I understood the train properly, the exchange that resulted in that comment was about whether this sort of water should be used as a secondary class of water, or use water as a secondary one, and then bottled water be used for drinking. And I think the point was being made that some would not be able to afford bottled water and then would be reduced to drinking this water. I think that's what it was about, Councillor Patrudine. And I had made a comment in response there that if even if the water was distributed and not used for drinking, it won't change the quality requirements that the city would have to comply with, because you're in physical contact with the water, and the city has a constitutional mandate to supply safe drinking water quality to all, without distinguishing between communities and so on. The point that I put my hand up for just to make is it would be incorrect for us to make the assumption that this water is worse than any other water that the city has access to, or any other community in South Africa or elsewhere for that matter. It's not true to imagine that the water that we currently source is absolutely pristine, and this is secondary to that. The chemicals and contaminants that we get concerned about end up in water all over the place. And I made the point in a chat comment there. Alarmingly, the forever chemicals are in bottled water as well. So if you think you're buying bottled water and you're getting perfect water without this, it's just not true. There's been quite a study done on this in South Africa already, and I don't think we would be unique internationally. So what is, I would say, maybe reassuring about what the city is doing with this is that you are saying, okay, now we deliberately recognize that these sorts of things are there and we do something about that. Whereas most water supply schemes around South Africa and elsewhere don't do that. They just assume it's simple water to treat, and they don't have these belts and braces and advanced processes and multiple barriers to attack and reduce the contaminants in this way. So they get through. And you think, oh, well, it came from a nice dam in the mountains, it's all fine. That's not necessarily the case. Okay, that's my point.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you so much. Jamie, do you want to come in?
Hi, good evening, all. Thanks, Zahid. Much appreciated. As always, there's a lot to be discussed, and I think I'll repeat some of my concerns pertaining to the SANS 241, and I understand it's under review. I think that the pertinent question to that is when will it be released and what will it cover? So I don't want to discuss too much on that, but I think the concerns which have been raised pertaining to chemicals of emerging concern and persistent pollutants and other nasties, what can we do proactively to educate the public to possibly reduce the use of certain products which are known to be contaminants which are going to impact our water quality? So I think there's an educational component that is missing in future-proofing ourselves to some degree is the mindfulness and the awareness that what you put down the drain is going to possibly come back to haunt you, sort of thing. And I don't want to do that from a fear-mongering point of view, but just from just realizing the impacts that our daily decisions have. And then the other item I'd like to just touch on is the concern of costs and the increase of 7%, if I heard correctly, in 2031, against already what I guess is called the cleaning levy. And I just read someone today who was very upset with the city of Cape Town, and he didn't use very polite language. But his bill with water and sanitation was literally 600 rands. But his connection fees and all sorts of other fees took that bill and increased it by another 3,000 rands. And, that's a massive amount of money for anyone to be having to cover when effectively that adds no value to their daily lives, sort of thing. And it's not a consumption, it's a fixed cost which they're paying for. So I'm just massively worried about the impact of future-proofing ourselves, but also making one of the basic and one of the cheapest forms of water that we have at the moment become more expensive. And I don't know what the cost comparison is to our existing water and the processing, etc. But it's something that I'm very mindful and very concerned about, that we're going to be sort of outpricing ourselves at some degree, and the future generations are going to have a massive headache to cover from a costing point of view. And I think my last point I'd like to raise is that the investment of 3 billion to upgrade Sunflit doesn't sound astronomical, but one also is quite mindful that we have 3 MOPs which are spewing raw sewage out into our marine protected areas and the nature reserve areas. And why don't we possibly rather reconsider upgrading those into water reclaim projects, as opposed to and solve 2 problems at the same time, sort of thing. So those are my basic comments. I don't know if we have enough time to reply to them, but nevertheless, I enjoy these dialogues and discussions, and I think they're fruitful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. I think you've definitely been one of our regular participants at these engagements. I'm grateful that you're here. On the issue of the account, certainly in the engagements that we've had as councillors with the mayor and with the finance teams and so on, if I heard correctly, you've said that residence bill increased by 3,000 rand. And that certainly sounds like an anomaly to me and something that is very unusual. I've not heard this before. But I do want to encourage you to please direct that resident to the ward councillor who would be able to sit with them to really deep dive into the account. But getting back to the first point you made in terms of what awareness can be done, what more can be done to educate residents regarding what they're putting into the systems, I think it's a very fair question, but definitely not a question we're going to answer now either, unfortunately, simply because of time. So I hope you'll allow me to park that for other engagements. I see Mike's come in. Maybe Mike will then address the remaining part of your question. Mike?
Yeah, just to comment on Jamie's comment about the marine outfalls. I mean, we are busy with a feasibility study, which is looking at options for the marine outfalls, obviously subject to budget constraints, feasibility studies, and environmental impact assessments. But yeah, and one of the options is treating it to drinking water standards. So it is something which we're looking at. It was part of our strategic study, looking at all wastewater treatment plants across the city. But we need to go for the low-hanging fruit first. And because we're implementing membrane biotechnology at Potsdam, that is definitely a low-hanging fruit, which will be a cheaper source of water. And as Jeremy and as Jamie said, I mean, affordability is a big constraint. So we need to go for the low-hanging fruit first.
Thanks very much, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, I want to try and make one last final point before we try and close. This was essentially, Mike, something that was in the media space soon after we had released the media statement on the water outlook. And there was an article in the Cape Argus about a week ago, and I'm looking at the moment, where the headline says, Cape Town's new water program faces delays, risking water supply goals. And I'm sure many of you have read it and many of you have seen it. But the conversation online was particularly interesting, looking at comments from residents suggesting that the reason for the delays is because the city doesn't have sufficient capacity or competency to implement these kinds of technical projects, which certainly in our engagements, I can confidently say is not the case, and that 1 year delay, as we've mentioned in the water outlook, is due to something else. Now, can I quickly, Mike, just as the last comment, pull you back in to tell us what essentially was the cause of that delay, but also to again reassure our residents here and councillors that we remain committed to the deadlines and goals of the new water program. Mike?
So I think the cause of the delay for the Faure New Water Scheme is primarily driven by legislative requirements, which we need to go through. So initially we were going to do it on our capital budget, and we were just going to outsource the operation and maintenance. So then a decision was taken to investigate alternative implementing mechanisms as well. That meant we had to start the Section 78 process from scratch. And then we also needed to follow the municipal public-private partnership guidelines, which are quite prescriptive in the process we need to follow. So we need to follow a very, very rigid process from a legal perspective if we're going to proceed. And that's what ends up delaying the scheme. If it was on our capital budget and we operated it, it would be far easier from a legislative perspective. But we believe going through the Section 78 process will give us the right solution ultimately. So it's just a factor of legislation, corporate governance. It's not a factor of delays from the technical side. I mean, the technical side has been done already.
So, Mike, it's fair for me to say that when the initial time frame was done, it was based on the assessments at that stage. But as this program developed, and as we, I think, fair to say, became more acquainted or more intimately acquainted with the legislative requirements that realistically, based on the various components that Kashifa shared in her presentation, because of that administrative elements, it pushed it out. And just to emphasize, not because of an incapacity to implement the project, which again incorrectly was being stated online. You want to confirm, Mike?
Yeah,
Or
that
not
is
confirm, but confirm?
no, I confirm that is correct, Councillor. But also, I mean, it's actually good corporate governance. We need to go through these processes if we're going to come out with the correct solution.
Thanks, Mike. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, we are close to 7:30, and I think we've engagement today around the Faure New Water Scheme. And I want to thank Kashifa for putting in the work in preparation for the presentation in collaboration with other individuals who are present here, but uh, um, prefer to do the work behind the scenes. And also to Brendan for coming in and supporting Kashifa on providing responses. And then also Mike, as always, thank you for being here with the team. Guys, in closing, I think I maybe just want to share with you a snippet from our water strategy. And I really do want to encourage those of you who don't have a copy, please feel free to visit me. I've got a number of them here that I'm happy to share with you, or come and download it from the city's website. But the water strategy is clear in terms of our water future, especially around utilizing all potential water sources. And it says very clearly that it's time for a new way of thinking about water. It's time to start seeing water as one finite resource. There is no wastewater, only wasted water. And we are all custodians of water, and the city is the driver of this change. And I really hope you got a sense of that in the presentation tonight, and that our goal is to make Cape Town a world-class city for our citizens. And water is key to this growth, and we must secure our water future to get us there. And as we continue to have these discussions, I hope that that confidence is shared by you, that you are reassured, and that you have all of the information necessary to talk to your residents about the city's investments that we are making to secure our water future. And just in closing, thank you to all of you for being here this evening. We had an excellent turnout, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one, where we talk about alien invasive plant removal, another important component of our new water program, and then followed by that, going into some detail around our pipe replacements in the city, the planning that goes behind that, which I'm sure will interest a lot of councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, officials here, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I hope to see you at our next Water Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.